Okay. Let me turn the volume up. 1 second, guys. Okay. Let me turn the volume up. Make sure you guys can hear me. So we are live. I gave you guys a handout in the group. It's a PDF. It was about anxiety. And I wanted to just kind of go over that and see if you had any questions about it. It was facts about anxiety. The first one is that anxiety is a feeling of fear and worrying and nervousness and being scared, which is actually a normal response to situations. Um, Sorry, guys, I'm just looking for the. So it's a normal response that someone has if a situation comes up, if there's danger, something that you should be afraid of. But if you listen to like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and a couple of the other ones, they explain to you that what happens is because you have this fear over and over and over, what happens is it actually becomes a habit. So then once it becomes a habit, it becomes the body, becomes in the body, becomes locked in the body. It's part of the body. So your body can take over and it can make you afraid and make you have anxiety and make you have panic. And nothing even has to happen. Only a small trigger needs to come into your awareness. So when I say small trigger into your awareness, I'm saying something that associates any a fear response. So it could be a smell. It could be somebody saying a single word. Doesn't even have to be directed at you, but just hearing that word. And because that word, that phrase has been associated with something that caused you a lot of fear in the past, your body will have this response. That's what we call a habit. And that's when we say that it's now become in the body. It is part of the subconscious mind. It's not a part of your conscious mind, it's your subconscious mind has taken over, and you now have this giant fear, and you don't even know why you have this giant fear. It just happens to you. Okay. So just to get you to understand why, like why do I get afraid and it seems like nothing happened? Well, something happened somewhere. There was some association, which caused your body to take over and say, hey, we need to be afraid. Which is kind of frustrating when people say to me, I don't even know why I'm afraid, nothing happened, but something happens somewhere. So the other thing is looking at and knowing that anxiety was originally supposed to be a good thing. It was supposed to be meant um, something to help you. So you are supposed to be agitated, either to fight or to run. That is anxiety's job, and it did its job perfectly. The problem is again when it happens all the time, or when it takes us over. So it's also a protection, and anxiety is always meant to protect us and to try to save us, to either run or to fight. Um, so a lot of people think that anxiety is bad, but it's actually not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It becomes bad when it happens to us all the time, and we get really tired of just seeming that for it to take us over constantly. So I wanted to see if you guys had, with this questionnaire, with this PDF that I gave you, you can print it out or you can keep it or just look at it to see if you had any questions about it. I also gave you a couple other ones, and I'm creating one right now that's on crystals to that you can use for the psychic development. So I have some people in here that are really interested in, this anxiety part, and then I have some that are really interested in the psychic ability energy part. So I'm offering both. I'm trying to give everybody part of both of what they want. So if you looked at the PDF that I gave you about anxiety, it also says that anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a guide. It's a mechanism inside of your body to let you know that something is scary or bad or off or wrong. It's meant to help you to make some changes in your environment so that you can feel okay. A lot of people say, I really like the idea that, some people might say they don't care about life, but if you have anxiety, then you really do care. You care a lot. And um, the key is to get you to move into a space where the anxiety isn't taking you over. It's not constant. And it's also something that you can somewhat maintain. Okay. So anxiety can be because of your thoughts, um, which is usually what I find is the primary reason, is that you are thinking thoughts of fear, thinking thoughts of being afraid of something bad's going to happen. You are imagining bad things are going to happen. You're projecting that bad things are going to happen in the future. And if you look, most of the time, none of them ever even happen. They usually never happen. So what I usually find is people will tell me, yeah, I imagined that, I was going to run into this person and they were going to say this and I was going to say that. And in reality, none of that ever happened. So a lot of times it's because we project into the future what we think is going to happen. So if there are any of you that are on here that want me to clarify any of the anxiety topics, you can ask me and let me know. If you also want to move over and talk about the energy, you can let me know. The other thing about anxiety is it goes along with the thinking is that, a lot of times we have these thoughts that are not real. I always tell people that purple elephants are not real. That's my phrase. And most of them are like, what? What are you talking about? Well, I can imagine purple elephants. I can imagine them. I can picture an elephant in my mind. I can make them purple, but that doesn't make them real. Just because I can imagine them doesn't make them real. So you have to realize that not everything that you think is actually real, just because you can think it. So going along with that is the avoidance. That's another area that um, fear will come up because we're trying to avoid a person, a situation, a place. We're trying to avoid that. It's another source of anxiety. We dread talking to that boss, or we dread talking to that relative or whatever. It's another source of anxiety. Um, and the control is a big thing. Actually, my daughter is sneezing like crazy. Um, we are trying to have, you want to get some allergy meds? Um, we're trying to have control. So we're trying to control what's going to happen, people, places, things that we really can't control. So if you're going into your workspace, you really can't control what the other people are going to do. You can't control what patients are going to do, what clients are going to do, what customers are going to do. In life, the only thing that you actually really can control is yourself. And I know everybody says that, and it kind of gets annoying, like, oh yeah, I can only control myself. But when you really learn that and figure that out and realize that you really can only control yourself and how you are going to respond or not respond, then it helps to free you. And I think that we can't necessarily address the anxiety issue if we don't address that there are some people where their bodies are wired biologically to be more anxious. That is a thing. There is a biological component to this. Um, In some of those cases, it does require that they get the proper medication for it. Okay. Uh, Environment is another area that I see this come up a lot, where I see a lot of people coming from homes where they watched mom be anxious or dad be anxious or mom constantly worry about everything. Or and another part of that is where we have parents that over control um, and overdo for the children. Then the children, they get anxiety because they don't really learn how to do things on their own. The parent always does it for them. So what I find is that when they get older, they come to me and they are afraid of life because they never actually dealt with life because their mom or their dad did it for them. That's another source of anxiety. So then this PDF that I gave you goes into basic ways to cope with anxiety. Some basic ways. And the key way is to change the thinking. That's the key way to deal with it. To stop, pay attention to what you're thinking, realize what you're thinking, look at those thoughts, and then ask yourself if those thoughts are actually real thoughts, if they're rational thoughts, or if they are fake thoughts that you are what ifing, that you're projecting that could happen. So are they actually real thoughts, or are they just fake things that we're kind of imagining that can happen? And the more that you learn to stop and to actually look at your thought and say, okay, is this something that can really happen, or am I imagining this? Then you can learn to stop them or to change them. Another key way is to it's called reframing, where we have these irrational thoughts and they're not necessarily real, and we have made it out to where things are going to just fall apart and everything's going to be bad. Is we can try to reframe them in a way where we can actually deal with them, where things aren't so bad, where we will actually be okay. It's called reframing. So you can reframe the thought, or you can rewrite the story. So if you're imagining this really bad story where everything's going to end and blow up, you can make yourself say, okay, well, what if things were actually okay? And what if I actually made it out of this? And you could use that. Um, there is a theory of exposure. I don't really use this theory a lot, but there is a theory of, if you were had a fear of planes or flying, that you would just go on the plane and make yourself fly. That would fix it, and it could do it. That's not one that I normally go to as far as trying to get someone to deal with a fear. Um, and then another, way to deal with anxiety is, some people I find have anxiety because they have excess energy. So if I were to have them pick a sport or go to the gym, or just get that excess energy out, sometimes that helps. I think I have some people that, I've actually, that's been their assignment, is to find some kind of big sport that they would like to do, whether it be rollerblading or um, baseball or running or anything like that. So um, that is something that I will assign to people. Now, it is not showing me, I can't see any of the comments for some reason. And the other thing is, which we already mentioned, is that if you do have a physical body that you just have anxiety, you may need to look into medication for it. Okay. I put on this PDF that I gave you that one of the best ways to learn to cope with anxiety is a quote from Shakespeare. that said things are neither good nor bad. Thinking makes them so. That is probably one of my favorite quotes, is that things are just things. They just happen, they're events, but it's the story that we attach to the events that matters the most. What is the story that you're attaching to the event? Are you attaching this big long story of, look, this always happens to me. I don't know why this always happens to me. I never seem to get ahead. I can't ever do things that I want to do. And if we are attaching that story, then we are obviously going to feel bad. We're going to feel worse. We are not going to be in the best mind frame. So it is super important to notice the story that you're attaching. Eckhart Tolle talks about this, and he says, the mind will run, and he uses the analogy of like a dog. If you have a dog and you throw a stick, the dog runs and chases the stick. The mind is the same way. If you throw the mind a little bit of negative, it will run and it will chase the stick. It will chase the negative. So being cautious that you're not doing that you're not throwing the mind these negative ideas and then the mind's running with them and creating and making them much worse. So we have realizing that, which we mentioned, that you are the only thing you can control in life is you. That is the only thing you can control. Focusing on what you can control. So you can control yourself as far as you can leave. You could go to a different place. You could not talk to this person. You could walk away. There's all these different things that you could do. You could breathe. You could ground yourself. These are the different things that, so you want to focus on, well, what can I do? You're on your way to work and your tire goes flat. You can't control that. Now you can get mad and you can be upset, but the reality is that the tire's already flat, and it is what it is. I've had people get upset and stay upset all day. That's just destroyed their day. But the reality is it's already happened. What you can do instead is say, okay, what can I do now? The tire's already flat. I'm already late. It's over. But what can I do now? So looking for the things you can do, the things you can control. Sometimes if I have people who do this a lot, I will have them, they do a lot of what ifing, which again, what ifing I don't allow. There's only a little bit of what ifing that I allow, if I run into the street. Yeah, you should think that you should not run into the street. But other than that, I don't allow what ifing because it's really just creates anxiety. It's not something that you want to do. There's a lot of what ifing going on in the world right now. And I think, and I've talked to a lot of people, and recently they've been saying that well, what if this happens or what if that happens? But again, I think that that's one of the easiest ways to get yourself anxious and get yourself scared and to upset yourself is to what if. Now there are some people that I will say to them, okay, so let's what if. Let's think about the worst case scenario. So had a person that was, they were always worried about getting fired from work or being late for work or getting in trouble at work. So I said, okay, well, let's what if. Let's say that one day that you are late for work and your boss gets upset. And let's say you do. Let's what if and say you do get fired. Now what? What's really the outcome of that? And after a minute of thinking, I said, okay, is there just no other job in the planet? No other job that you could possibly get? And they sat and they thought for a while and they were like, like, no. Now, you may not want to lose the job you have, but that's not the last job in the world. There are other jobs that you can get. So sometimes I will make them go to the end of the what ifing just to get them to see that even the worst case scenario a lot of times isn't really the end of the world. And we're not really talking about death or hurting people or anything like that. Those are different topics, but we're talking about in general, the worst case scenario usually is not even the worst case scenario. It's usually not. It's usually us just being upset or being over dramatic, overthinking. The next part of this is learning to accept, and it's part of the learning what you can control and what you can't control. If you are late for work, you are already late for work. You are not going to be late for work. You are not going to unlate yourself. You're not going to snap your fingers and all of a sudden be on time. You are late, period. And at that point, the only thing that you can really do to create peace is acceptance. You must accept. You just need to accept. You're late. The tire's flat. The cup is broke. You're just late. So again, that is where you step into, okay, acceptance. What can I do? And I created a list here of things that are ways to cope. So we talked about noticing your thoughts. We talked about you can stop them. Just literally say, what am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking negative. Oh, okay, let me stop doing that. Stop. And then 2 seconds later, oh, what am I thinking again? I'm thinking negative. Okay, stop. And then you can replace them. You can think about a happy thought. You can think about a happy movie, happy memory. And these are all different things that you can do. You can also, one of the bigger things to do about anxiety, which is not easy to do, is to realize that your anxiety is a guidance system. It's a guidance system that is innately built within us. Your emotions are actually a guidance system. And they're a guidance system to tell you whether something feels good or not, whether you are on track or not, whether you are aligned with source or not. So if you're not feeling good, then ultimately you and your thoughts are not aligned with the true nature of yourself. The true nature of yourself is a soul of God. And if you are not aligned with that you are a soul of God and you have infinite worth and purpose, then your emotions will be off. And that's exactly what emotions were designed for, really, is to show you that your thinking's off, and that it needs to be changed. A lot of us, that's not how we're taught about emotions. That's not what we're taught about emotions. And we're not even taught that that's what they're really here for. And that's what their job is to say, hey, you're not thinking the best about yourself or somebody else or something. And because you're not, you're having this negative feeling. If you could change the way you're feeling, if you could move into a peace or move into acceptance, move into love, then you wouldn't have these negative feelings. I'm not saying this is easy to do. I'm saying this is what emotions were actually created for. Is it always easy to move into acceptance and love and peace? Absolutely not. It's not. It is something that is a process. It is something that has to be worked on. It is a skill that you have to develop. The more you do it, the easier it does get. The more you do it, the faster you do move into acceptance. And acceptance requires the ability to remove the personalism. The more you can learn to not take things personally, the less hurt, upset, angry, mad you will be. These are probably some of the biggest skills, life skills, that I could give people, is the faster that you realize that your emotions are your guidance system telling you you are not in line with who and what you truly are, and you are not thinking right about something. And the faster you can get yourself in line with removing the personal judgment, removing the personal attachment, and trying to see this issue from a source of love, the faster you will have peace. the more you practice that, the more you will have peace in life. And again, it's not something that's easy to do. I am still working on that in my life. I still have people or situations that get me upset, that seem to be able to provoke my emotions. I wish I was beyond that. But there's also a part of, being human. You're going to have emotions and you're going to have negative emotions. So while maybe Buddha didn't have them and maybe Jesus didn't, human inside of a human body. So one of the things I want you to do is, and the reason I created this anxiety thing is because I want people to, one, realize that anxiety, you can get rid of it, you can remove it, you can deal with it, you can change it. But I also want, my bigger thing is, I want people to realize that you don't have to be stuck in these emotions. You're not a victim to them. They're here for a reason. They have a purpose. We just need to learn how to manage them better. And we don't know how to manage them in this world. We're not taught how to manage them. They come in, they take us over, they stay around, they make us feel really bad, and then that's it. Most of us are told to not have them, not cry, don't be angry. And even I've been guilty of saying those things at times to my kids, when my kids were younger. But more and more I realize now that emotions are a very necessary thing to learn to cope with, to learn to deal with. So a few other things that I put on here is doing kind of a meditation with your anxiety. So once you've come out of the anxiety state and once you have calmed down, one of the things you can do is maybe before you go to bed at night, or before you go to sleep, or maybe if you're taking a bath or taking a walk, is you can actually visualize yourself. So here's one of the keys in meditation and in manifesting things is when you do a meditation, do a visualization. And when you do a visualization, here's one of the keys is to, one, actually imagine yourself in the scenario. So you want to, in this instance, you want to imagine yourself in that anxious state and then actually coping with that state or succeeding in that state, handling that difficult situation without fear, being strong and being able to fully cope with it and come out on the other side successful, or at least happy, or at least stable. When you're doing visualizations, here's one of the keys is you want to add in these different elements, okay? You want to add in the visual, which is it the room? Is it the people? Is it the space? You want to kind of add in those things. You also want to add in the colors. What does it look like? What color is it? Try to add some smells in there too. Are there any flowers around, any trees? Is somebody cooking something? Add in the smells. And then you also want to, in the visualization, you want to either touch something or sit somewhere and feel the chair, or you want to have somebody touch you. Okay, so we're adding in all the five senses is what we're doing. We're adding in the visual, we're adding in the smell, the touch. You can actually try to taste something as well if you want. And in the visualization, you remember that you are in control and you want to visualize you. In this instance, we're talking about anxiety, dealing with that, coping with that, handling that. And what that does is it actually gives your brain a reference. So it gives your brain a reference of being able to actually cope. So before this, perhaps you never visualized this. You feel like you never really won any situations. You never could really handle any. But now that once you have visualized this, that's actually in your brain now. That's actually there. It becomes an option. It's something you can use. So I really do suggest that you try to do the visualizations and make sure you add in all the five senses in there, as many as you can. I always, we always suggest that if you're having anxiety to breathe. What we have found is that people who are having anxiety don't breathe. They're holding their breath, actually. They're not really breathing. So making yourself breathe, making yourself slow down your breathing. You can also do the distraction. You can talk to somebody, go for a walk. You can do all those different types of things. All those things work. And then my uh, final one is take a nap. If all else fails, take a nap or go to bed, because sleeping is actually an energy reset. Now, I don't want you sleeping all day, but that is an energy reset. So that is something that you can do. I can see that there's a couple of you on here. I can't see any comments. So I don't know if you have any questions. If you do, you can put them in the box, and I'll go back and I'll look at them later. So for today, what I wanted to do is just kind of go over this PDF that I gave you on anxiety and explain it a little bit for you. And then my idea is that I also gave you one on psychic ability, and um, I'm going to try to come back another day this week, and I will go over that PDF on the psychic ability. And then, like I said, I have one that I'm creating on the crystals right now, and on self-esteem. So any other topics that you want, you guys, please feel free to ask me for them and ask me what you want to know. And I am going to get off of here for now, and then I will talk to you guys later. I hope you have a great night. Thanks.